Yeah, because I may have creeped out Joel Klatt there, who joins us now. Sorry about that, Joel.
No problem. I'm just glad that you recuse yourself, like college football committee, voting on their own school.
Yeah. By the way, what happens when everybody gets in there? Notre Dame is not represented in the college football committee, are they? Is there somebody in there to speak on the behalf of independents?
Well, technically, you've got a guy like Tyrone Willingham, who is a coach at Notre Dame. And what's interesting enough is that
Yeah, but they fired
Tyrone
him,
Willingham.
Joel.
I know, and here's the thing that's so interesting about it is that he's in the room when they do talk about Notre Dame. He's not allowed in the room when they talk about a team like Duke or Stanford, which I think is so interesting. So here's a guy that may have pretty harsh feelings about a school that's allowed to stay in the room to debate and talk about Notre Dame, which I find just fascinating.
All right, you got Baylor at Oklahoma State coming up Friday night, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not Friday night, on Saturday.
On Saturday
night.
Okay, Saturday night. How important are these games here with Oklahoma's game coming up and Oklahoma State's game of them and the potential to have one of these teams get in the Final Four?
Yeah, I mean, they're as important as any games that they've played since 2011, since they lost that Friday night game to Iowa State with Brandon Whedon as their quarterback and Justin Blackman, which is a loss that kept them out of the BCS National Championship game. These are vital for their program and for the conference, in particular for Oklahoma State, who's undefeated, and also Oklahoma. The committee has put the Big 12 behind the eight ball. They clearly don't value the Big 12 at all, and the burden of proof is now on these teams as opposed to on some of the Big Ten teams like Iowa or Ohio State, who haven't proved a whole lot during the course of the season and yet are sitting there higher than Oklahoma State, when Oklahoma State clearly has a better win than both of those teams because they beat TCU, which the committee just knocked 3 spots for winning without their quarterback. It's a Heisman caliber quarterback who got injured against Kansas. So I just think it's a very interesting philosophy that this committee has taken, and it's made these games, like you suggested, just vital for both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Which top 4 team is most vulnerable here?
I still think that Notre Dame is most vulnerable, and the one logic and theory that I don't think people have pointed out, but I think absolutely needs to be talked about, is the fact that Notre Dame has an affiliation with the ACC, and while they're not officially an ACC school, this is a team, an organization that plays 6 games against the ACC, and they lost one of those games. So in my eyes, they're like a team that's going to finish second in their own division because they lost to Clemson. I think it would be much different, and I would give them the benefit of the doubt if they would have lost to a team that was outside of the ACC. If conference championships are going to matter, then it matters more if Notre Dame loses one of their ACC games than if they lose outside of that schedule. And therefore, I think Notre Dame is going to be vulnerable as we move forward. They've also got a very tough game against Stanford, which I don't know if they're going to get past on the road. And a champion from the Big 12, in particular, if it's Oklahoma State and they're undefeated, I think is absolutely going to pass them.
He's Joel Klatt, Fox Sports college football analyst. He's got Baylor at Oklahoma State coming up Saturday night on Fox. What other matchups are intriguing? Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan State. Michigan State, their chances of winning in Columbus are what?
Michigan State has been a great program for a bunch of years, right? And in particular here in the last 3 years. But I don't see it with them this year. Every single week, I wait for them to start playing the type of football that we saw them play in particular last season, and they just don't do it. I don't think that they've got enough against Ohio State. Ohio State is so good on the defensive front seven. With Joey Bosa, especially, who's playing really well here down the stretch. And then Ezekiel Elliott has been dominant in the run game. And so whatever, troubles they've been having with Tom Herman and his exit as an offensive coordinator, I think they're going to be able to get past Michigan State. But in terms of that game, and then obviously the game that I'll be calling, Baylor and Oklahoma State, and then the other game that you've got to pay attention to is TCU traveling to Oklahoma. TCU is still just a one-loss team. Oklahoma obviously has been great at home throughout the years, but now all of a sudden Baker Mayfield is making a Heisman push. That's a very intriguing game as well. And let's not forget Charleston Southern and Bama. I mean, you don't just schedule the Buccaneers and walk out with a victory.
Well, they're both 9-1, Joel.
Oh, well, exactly. I mean, you better have your head on the swivel if you're Jake Coker.
Is this Heisman Derrick Henry's to lose right now?
I think so. He's been dominant, and he's been dominant in the back half of the season, which Heisman voters absolutely love. He's been great in their biggest games, their most important games, and he's rushed for 200-plus yards in 3 of his last 4 games. And the Alabama record, this is crazy. I didn't, you would think that Alabama has had, these amazing running backs, but really, Ingram was the Heisman. And then you look at the record books, Alabama's only had a running back run for 200 yards 4 times in a career. That's the most ever. And Derrick Henry's done it 3 times in his last 4 games.
Wow.
So this guy is doing things that, not even that program has seen historically. And I think people are going to absolutely put him at their top of their ballots, and I think it is absolutely his to lose. But we'll have to see what Mayfield does, because if he's able to get Oklahoma into this playoff, I think that's going to be a strong statement here at the end of the season.
Before I let you go, you have teams that are already looking ahead to next season in the NFL. And let's face it, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you're probably not going to make the playoffs. If you were looking at some of these teams that are going to be up there and have a chance at the number 1 pick, is there a quarterback that you've seen where you would say he's a top 5, top 3, maybe number 1 pick overall, if, say, the Cleveland Browns end up with a number 1 pick overall?
Yeah, I have, and it's a guy that wasn't on the radar coming into the season. Paxton Lynch from Memphis, I believe, is going to be the first quarterback taken. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick, and it'll just, that vetting process will go out to see if he's a top 5 pick. But that's the guy that I would look at. He's tall, he's big, he's got a strong arm, and he's also playing for a guy in Justin Fuente, who was the coach at TCU, an offensive coordinator for Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton has obviously had some success. Now, I know people say he hasn't had the ultimate success, but he's been pretty darn good for Cincinnati. I think half or 3/4 of the league would take Andy Dalton right now. So I think Paxton Lynch is going to be a guy that's going to be very attractive to NFL teams.
What did you think of Andy Dalton being disappointed in J.J. Watt's trash talking?
I just hate it. It's like don't touch it. J.J. Watt is one of those untouchables. It doesn't make your case any easier, because everybody wants to not like Andy Dalton for some reason. I think it's because all the playoff losses.
No,
don't give
Joel,
him any ammunition.
Joel, it's because of the red hair.
Well, I didn't want to say it. You can do that. You've got, more years. You got more equity in this business. I can't just come out and say that.
I'm fighting for the redheads. I am. But I think there's a redheaded bias.
I think that there could be. Here's the question, though. You have to ask yourself, is it as strong as the anti-Big 12 bias that the committee has?
I could do a whole hour on that topic, Joel. I think I could.
I mean, this screams I'd love to be in studio for that. You could go 2 hours if you really needed to.
Do you want to weigh in on the handsomest sportscaster?
I think I'll recuse myself.
Okay,
as well.
that's the answer. That's you're an expert witness, but that's the right answer by you. Safe travels. Have fun, and thanks for joining us again, Joel.
Of course, anytime. Thanks, man.
Joel Klatt, Fox Sports college football analyst, former quarterback at Colorado.